Good morning, pet parents of Regina. We are coming to you a little bit earlier than we usually do on our Furry Friday. And as you can see, it looks a little bit different where I am too because the CIO, Mr. Zahner, has to go back to the vet today for his complimentary dental checkup. So we're just waiting to go to the vet, which is why I'm not in the store today. But I certainly didn't want to miss Furry Friday, especially because what we're talking about is so important to so many pet parents. So many pet parents want to make sure that they are feeding a quality meal to their furry family members to keep them as healthy and happy and thriving as possible. And it's tough. Hi, Catherine. It's tough if you start Googling, what's the best pet food or how do I make sure my pet is eating a healthy meal? You're going to get pulled into a bazillion different ways or different ideas or different opinions of what is good and what isn't good and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And it can become extremely overwhelming, especially if you're a brand new pet parent or if you haven't had a brand new furry guy in the house for a while and now you finally do again. Pet food has changed. Pet food has changed. And we certainly don't want anybody to think that, oh my goodness, like what I was doing was wrong, or my poor furry guy, I can't believe I made him eat this stuff. We don't want anybody to think like that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we used to smoke on planes too. Mm-hmm. We know more now. Okay. We know more. And that's another reason why pet food has changed. We're also a society of individuals, whether pet parents or not, whether we have the ability to do our own research, and a lot of times we do. So we're becoming a much more educated and informed consumer. That's another reason that there's major opportunity out there for pet food manufacturers to step up their game, to be more transparent, to provide quality nutrition for our furry guys versus the regular old hard dried out bits in a bag, and they say that's food. And we know it's not food. Good morning, Cheryl. It's not, I'm going to tell you why it's not food. The traditional kibbles, if you walk into any grocery store, where is the pet food? Food. Where's the pet food in a traditional grocery store? It's not where our food is. It's down the aisle of laundry fabric, laundry soap, chemicals, bleach. Do you know why their pet food is allowed to be down that aisle? Because it's not actually considered food, it's considered feed. And feed does not go by or adhere to the same rules, guidelines, principles, whatever you want to call it, that actual food does, that we eat. You would never find our food in the laundry aisle, but they put our pets' food there. And it's because it's feed. That's why they're allowed to put the feed with the chemicals. Okay. So more and more and more pet parents every day are wanting to do better, get better, all the things, put better stuff in our pets' bowls. And we know that it can be confusing. We know that it can be very overwhelming, and you can find yourself in a sea of information where you feel like you're drowning and you don't know which way is up. That is why we put together our little tool that is on our website that everybody can access, that is called What Grade is My Kibble? And you may have seen in my post this morning that I said B's and C's don't cut it when we're talking about our pet's diet, because we know we can extend the lives of our pets through nutrition. Food is one of the best medicines And it is also one of the slowest acting poisons if we're not using the food properly, if we're not feeding a good diet. So food can be one of two things. It can fuel our body and it can extend our lives and it can improve everything about our health, or it can slowly poison us and create inflammation and health problems. And that category of food, in my opinion, is the feed side of the house. Okay. So if you are feeding a dry diet today and you want to understand, is this the best option that I can be putting into my furry guy's bowl? Then you're going to want to pop over to our website and I will show you here very quickly. This is another reason why Furry Friday worked out perfect today, since I wasn't in the office. I was going to have to be on my computer in the back anyways to show you this, because I'm going to bring that onto the screen here. Give me 1 second and I will I will share my screen. Where did that option go? Give me a second here, you guys. Oh. Great, it goes away. It does not let me share my screen as it once did. Okay. I'm not going to be able to show it to you, you guys, but what I will do is I will go over it with you while we're live. So I'm going to be looking at a different screen. So if I don't see your comments right away, I will as soon as I get back. But when you go onto our website, you can go to the bottom of any page and you will see a list of links. What Great is My Kibble is one of those links. So when you click on that link, What Great is My Kibble, it kind of gives you a little bit of a description about why all kibble is not created equally and why we truly want to understand what is in our pet's bowl. So you have to have your bag in order to be able to do this assessment, because you need to look at the information that is provided on that bag. The manufacturers, and we've talked about this lots, right? They want to wow you and dazzle you with all of the pretty pictures on the front of the bag. Maybe it's big, beautiful chunks of juicy meat, or maybe it's healthy looking fruits and vegetables. We know that what's on the front of the bag does not represent what is in the bag. So we need to look at the back of the bag to figure that out. The first thing that the kibble assessment wants you to look at is what is the first ingredient listed on that ingredient panel. Remember, the ingredient panel on the back goes in order of size from biggest to smallest. So we want to take a look at specifically what is the first ingredient listed. I would love for you to look at the first 3 or 5, but the first one is the most important because that is the biggest ingredient in our entire bag of pet food. So take a look at that. And we want to see that that first ingredient is a named protein, okay? Named protein. So that means that it is grass-fed beef, or it is pasture-raised lamb, or it is wild-caught salmon, or it is whatever. We want to see that it's named beef, lamb, salmon. I'm okay with that. I do not want to see animal meat. I do not want to see a byproduct. I do not want to see, I don't even want to see that it starts with a named meal. And the reason that I don't want to see that it is that the first ingredient in our bag of food is a named meal is because if we've talked about this before, and I know that we have, but I'm going to remind the folks that maybe haven't heard it in the past from us, meal is essentially powdered meat. Okay, so they take whatever meat they're working with and they cook it at extreme high temperatures to essentially make a slurry or a stew or whatever you want to call it. They essentially liquefy the carcasses. And then they use another high heat process to turn that liquid into powder. Now, meals are about 300 times more potent than the actual protein that we want our animals to eat. So they're a very high source of protein. Think about a protein powder that we would put in our smoothies. It's potent protein, but it's also a tiny little cup that gives us like the same amount as if we ate like a piece of steak or something, right? So the potency of protein is high in a meal, but it is also the most processed part of our kibble. That's why I don't want to see that our kibble, that the first ingredient in our kibble is a meal or the most processed part of kibble. It's already a very highly processed diet. We want to be feeding more of a fresh whole food diet. So if we're going to feed kibble as a base, then we want to make sure that it's premium because it is already highly processed. We don't want it to be starting with the most processed part of kibble. So we want to see that that first ingredient is a named protein. And if yours is, you're getting 10 points, okay? And it goes down all the way to 1 point, depending upon what that first ingredient is. Pardon me. The second thing that we want to take a look at, and this is the dirty little secret that the pet food manufacturers don't ever want us to know about because, again, and I wish I had a bag here to show you guys. They'll have their big, beautiful pictures on the front of the bag with those big, nice cuts of meat or the fish and the berries and the carrots and all the things. And we go, oh my goodness, that must be in there because it's on the front of the bag, right? The salt divider is the manufacturers, the pet industry's dirty little secret about how they can advertise fruits and vegetables in our pets' food, which is an important part of their diet. They can advertise it. You don't really have to put much of it in there. When you flip over that bag and you take a look at the list of ingredients and you find salt, this is known as the salt divider. We want to see that our fruits and vegetables are before the salt, okay? Because remember, it goes in order of size from biggest to smallest. And salt, it is an industry standard that salt can only be 1% of the entire bag. So if our fruits and vegetables are before the salt on that list of ingredients, we know that there's actually fruits and vegetables in that bag. If those fruits and vegetables are listed after the salt, and salt can only be 1% of the bag, you'd be lucky if there was an entire blueberry in that 40-pound bag of kibble. It's less than 1%. So we don't want to be fooled by that. In our kibble assessment tool, we want to see that your fruits and vegetables come before the salt, and corn and potatoes won't likely be listed in your healthy foods anyways, but also do not count as fruits and vegetables. So if you see that the first ingredient in your bag is corn, you don't score 10 points for that, okay? It has to be, blueberries, cranberries, carrots, those types of fruits and veggies, not the starchy ones like corn and potatoes. So if your fruits and vegetables are before your salt, you're scoring 10 points. If your fruits and vegetables are after the salt, you're scoring 5 points. And if there are no fruits and vegetables, we're only scoring 1 point for that kibble because fruits and vegetables are healthy for our pets. And we want to make sure that we're seeing that in their food. The next part of the assessment is the preservatives. And this is how is our pet's food preserved? We've talked about this a lot because it bugs me. It really bugs me that the types of synthetic preservatives or chemicals that the pet food industry allows in our pet's food, like BHA, BHT, ethoxyquin, those are synthetic chemicals used in jet fuel, used in embalming fluid, used to prevent lipstick from drying out. It should not be in our pet's food ever. Okay, so we do not want to see that any food is preserved synthetically with those. Yes, they last longer, but they're also chemicals. We want to see that the food is preserved naturally through what is called mixed tocopherols, vitamin E, vitamin C, rosemary extract. We want to see that the food is naturally preserved versus synthetically preserved. There's only two options when we come down to this part of the assessment, and your food is either naturally preserved, and you would score a 10, or it's synthetically preserved, and you get 0 points for that. Okay? Or not you, your kibble, your kibble. Okay, next part of the assessment is the color. And again, this this fries my goose or boils my goose or whatever it is, it makes me mad that food manufacturers put in dyes in our food, in our pets' food. Okay, our cats and dogs do not care what color their food is. They could give two craps if there's little orange pellets or green pellets or yellow pellets or red pellets or brown pellets. They do not care. Unless we are feeding some sort of a fresh food where we can actually identify that that little tiny orange chunk in there is a carrot, or that that little tiny red chunk is a cranberry, that's okay, because that's real food. When the pet manufacturers want to color the food to make it look like real food, they're using dyes, actual paint that you would use to paint your house, paint a fence, paint a wall, I don't care. We do not want to see any type of dye in our pet's food or treats. So if we pick up the package and we see yellow dye number 5 and blue dye number 40 and red, whatever they are, I don't know what the numbers are, it doesn't matter. As soon as you see color or any type of dye added to our pet's food, if we're serving a kibble that has those dyes, we're getting 0. If we don't have any dyes, we're scoring 10. Okay? All right, we're almost done, you guys. The fifth and final part of the assessment, or the final part that we have to figure out, is our carbs. Remember, we talk about this all the time. You're going to hear, all the different things about you don't want to feed grains, you do want to feed grains, get the grain free, get the grain inclusive. Grains are not the issue. Carbs are the issue. If it's a grain-free or a grain-inclusive food and the carbs are low, that's what we're looking for. The grains are irrelevant. But the carbs is what's important, because our dogs and cats have no biological requirement for carbs. So when they eat carbs, the carbs turn into sugar, and the sugar is what feeds disease. In kibble, we cannot get away from carbs, because that's the starch, right? And the kibble manufacturer needs that starch to hold the little pellets in their shape. So we're never getting away from carbs in a dry food, but we can always look for ways to reduce or eliminate carbs, not eliminate entirely in kibble, but reduce the amount that we're feeding. And we can also include different things to offset the impact of carbs. But we need to know what the carbs are in our food. Pet food manufacturers are never, ever going to tell you what the carbs are in their food, because if you saw that the food was 60% carbs, you likely wouldn't buy it. Now, there is some talk that hopefully they will have to start listing carbs. But at this point, they do not. And AAFCO's reasoning for this is because our dogs and cats don't have a biological requirement for carbs, so it doesn't need to be listed on the bag. I think that's backwards, because they don't have a biological requirement. We would like to know how many carbs are in their food. So here is the simple equation that you can figure out the carbs in your food. Again, you got to grab your bag. You're going to look for what's called the guaranteed analysis, and that's what lists how much protein, how much fat, how much moisture. Sometimes you'll see fiber, sometimes you'll see ash. Then they'll get down into all the vitamins, vitamin A, D, B, whatever. But what we're looking at is the total amount of protein, the total amount of fat, the total amount of moisture, plus the total amount of ash. And they don't always list ash, so it's normally 6 to 8. So I always put 8. Just to be on the safe side, I put 8, okay? So you're gonna add your protein, plus your fat, plus your moisture, plus your ash, and you're going to subtract that from 100. And what's left over is carbs. So if you add up your protein and your fat and your moisture and your ash, and you come up with a total of 45, subtracted from 100, that means that 55% of the food that you're feeding is carbs. Okay? So that little formula is in the guide for you. You can just go in there and you can plunk in the numbers, do the math. You're basically adding it up and subtracting from 100, and that's going to tell you how many carbs are in that food. The last thing that you're going to do with the steps that you went through to identify what your points were for each component that we're assessing is you're going to add that up, and you're going to see what your overall final score is. 46 to 50 points means that you are serving an A kibble, a grade A kibble. That's a premium base. And as long as we're feeding a premium base, we can always do things to improve it. If we're feeding a B or below, a B, a C, a D, or an F, we want to look for a different food. We absolutely want to look for a different food. A grade A kibble is the only kibble that we want to feed if we're feeding a dry food. Because remember, the reason that we're saying this is kibble is so highly processed. It's the most processed meal that we can feed our pets. So if you and I are going to eat McDonald's all the time, the best bet that we have, or the best chance that we have of trying to maintain our health and be healthy, is to eat the healthiest thing that McDonald's makes. And maybe that's their salad, or maybe that's a boneless, skinless chicken breast with no bun and no sauce and all that stuff, right? So if we're going to feed dry food, the most processed diet that we can give our pets, we want to make sure that it is a premium base. And then we want to improve it by adding on those liquid boosters like goat's milk or bone broth, or we want to add freeze dried or gently cooked, or even top with raw. We want to include supplements. We want to get fresh whole foods in the bowl. Less processed, more fresh whole foods, right? Just like they say to us, the same is true for our pets. So if you're feeding dry and you want to understand what grade your kibble is, on our website, on any page, you go right to the bottom. There's a list of links and you'll see what grade is my kibble. You click on that. You can fill out the documentation and you can give yourself your kibble an assessment, and you'll know exactly where you're standing. And then that starts to clear the muddy waters from everything that is out there in Google land telling you what you should and shouldn't do with your pet food. As always, you guys, we are always here for you. If you have questions, if none of this makes sense, or if something doesn't make sense, pop in, message us, call us. We're always here. We're more than happy to help you. I thank you and appreciate you for spending some of your Friday afternoon with us. I look forward to seeing you in store tomorrow, as I'm not there today, but the girls will see you today. Otherwise, you guys, I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.